Now, just to clarify that, I did say being sensitive, not be insensitive to raise size. You definitely should be sensitive to raise size, and as this, as this diagram clearly shows us. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. My name's Gareth James for mttpokerschool.com, and today we're going to take a look at a pretty interesting hand from the 5.3k WSOP Big Freeze Out, obviously played on WSOP.com, and this hand was played by the one and only Daniel Negreanu. Let's take a look at the hand. Okay, so the hand starts then with middle position opening up for a 2.6x, which straight away is a really big raise for his stack size. He's got around 25 big blinds at the start of the hand. 2.6x, I think, is just way too big. And it's going to have a knock-on effect to the kind of strategy that you can employ further down the line. So I think what you should do here is go for a much smaller raise, 2x, 2.1x, something like that. But yeah, when he goes to 2.6x and it folds to Negreanu here in the big blind, then his strategy should change somewhat because of this, this bigger raise size. So let's just play through the rest of the hand. Flop comes 10, 6, 2, 2 clubs, 1 spade. Negreanu goes for the check, and we see a small c-bet here, 1100, just over third pot, I guess. And then we see Negreanu go for the check raise, 3200. I think it's pretty good. Should definitely be check raising top pair, top kicker, and especially at this SPR stack to pot ratio. So villain calls in this spot, and then Negreanu goes ahead and jams. And yeah, I mean, I think he's played the hand really well, and the villain's going to call off with 8s. And yeah, I mean, we don't need to talk about the result, but I think there's lots to talk about in terms of the effect of that really big raise size on the strategy for the rest of the hand. Okay, let's take a look at the ranges then. So this is middle position's opening range for a 2x, and this is the big blind's defending range versus that 2x raise. And you can see it's pretty wide, right? And it's probably what you would expect. If you've ever seen pre-flop solutions, you're probably going to be familiar with how wide you can defend here versus a min raise. Now remember, there's only 7 players at the table, so there are fewer antes in the middle, so these ranges might not be exactly the same as other pre-flop ranges that you've seen before. So we're going to do a lot of defending here in the big blind. We call with lots of suited hands, and we call with connected hands, and sometimes two gappers, stuff like that. So you can see the kind of hands that we're supposed to call versus a 2x. Now I went into the solver and I changed it to a 2.6x opening range, and I just made the range a lot stronger. So I got rid of the hands like king 10 off, queen jack off, ace 9 off, ace 3 suited, a king 7 suited, and 9 8 suited. Now you could argue that the range here for opening to 2.6x would be even stronger, and that's fair enough. But the real reason to go into the solver and change this range and then put in a different opening size was to show you how much tighter you need to defend in the big blind. Big reveal. This is what the big blind's defending range now looks like. So you can see that the big blind needs to call a lot tighter and play fewer hands. And you could really see the effect of that extra 0.6 big blinds in this solution. So I see a lot of players, they'll have an ace in the big blind and they'll kind of just not really care about how big the pre-flop raise size is, and they'll just always call. They're like, I can't fold an ace. I've got I've already got a big blind out there. I've got to defend. But the real purpose of this video is to show you that you actually don't need to do that, and you should be definitely being sensitive to raise size. Now, just to clarify that, I did say being sensitive, not be insensitive to raise size. You definitely should be sensitive to raise size, and as this diagram clearly shows us. So why is that? What's going on here? Why do we need to defend a lot tighter versus a bigger raise size? Well, let's take a quick look at pot odds pre-flop versus a 2.6x raise. We're getting 3-1 on a call, which is the equivalent to 25%. So we need 25% equity, and we need to be able to realize that as well. So it's no good just firing up Equilab or Flopzilla and putting in a hand, seeing how it fares against a range, because I think that most hands are going to have at least 25% equity against an opening range, even some really bad hands. But the thing is that those really bad hands do a really poor job at realizing equity. So it's not just a case of like, oh, we can just play, you know, any two cards here. We need to be looking at equity realization and equity against range in order to come up with the kind of hands that we are supposed to defend in this spot. So they're the few things to think about when you're defending the big blind, is how does your hand play against your opponent's range? Does it have enough equity? And can that equity be realized post-flop? So hands that do really well in terms of realizing equity are obviously going to be suited hands, suited aces, pairs, and connected hands. You know, hands, if you think about it, hands that are going to flop something and be able to continue past the flop a lot more frequently. Versus a 2x raise then, suddenly we're getting 4.2 to 1 or 19.23%. So we obviously need less equity in order to continue here, but again, it's equity and equity realization that we need to be thinking about. But you know, you can see that it's almost a 6% difference, and so it's going to have a massive effect on the kind of hands we get to defend here. So let's have a look at the effect on the in position flop strategies on this 10-6-2 board. So here you can see the 2.6x in position flop strategy, and there's quite a lot of checking actually. I think that you might look at this board and think, oh, 10-6-2 middle position versus big blind, you just get to do a lot of betting. And that would be true if you'd gone for a 2x open in the first place. But as soon as you go for a 2.6x open and suddenly the big blind calls a lot tighter, then that massively affects your flop strategy. So again, it's really important that you understand that by going bigger, it completely changes the dynamic and the strategy that you need to be using post-flop. If we'd gone for a 2x raise size pre-flop and the big blind then has to defend a lot wider, we then get to pretty much range bet this board. You can see there's a little bit of checking, but mainly we're going for the bet. So really clear indication that bigger raise size pre completely changes the flop strategy. So why is this going on? Let's have a quick look at equities. So in positions equity here is 56.2% when they go for the bigger raise size. And again, they've gone tighter. You think, okay, we've got a stronger range here, but then so does the big blind, right? So it has a knock-on effect. This big raise size has a massive knock-on effect. And in terms of really strong hands on this board, 2-pair plus, 3% of their overall range is 2-pair plus versus 2.4% for the out of position. So we do have an equity advantage. We do have a slight nut advantage. But yeah, as we're about to see, it's not quite as good as when we go for the min raise pre. So versus the min raise, in position suddenly has almost 60% equity, and you can see that, you know, in terms of 2-pair plus, the in position player now has a bigger advantage. But I mean, we're talking small numbers here. On a 10-6 deuce board, it's just quite tough for either player to have a really strong hand. So there are definitely going to be other things that are affecting the strategy here. You might be thinking about how much tighter the big blind is defending here, and therefore has more hands that they can continue versus a c-bet. And we're now going to look at the out of position flop strategies versus the small c-bet, given the two different ranges. So versus a 2.6x, you can see this is what the solution looks like. And you can see that the out of position player folds 29%, calls 53, raises about 17, and jams 1, trace amount of jamming in there. And you can see the kind of hands that continue here. I'll just bring my laser pointer over. So you can see there's a lot of hands in sort of this region having pairs and draws to be able to continue. And then these hands up here are going to be flush draws. And then the same thing going on here and here. And then, you know, the bigger the cards, like ace jack and king queen, for example, they're probably going to need the flush draw and a backdoor flush draw, or flush draw or backdoor flush draw to continue. Same thing goes for like king queen off. So king queen off with a club probably continues, and king queen off without probably doesn't. Same thing, king queen suited. So king queen of clubs will call, king queen of spades will call, but the others will probably fold. Right, and then we see some raising with the ace 10, which is exactly what Daniel did in this spot, and other hands to go for the check raise, queen 10, king 10, a bit of jack 10, 10 9, and then we get some weaker 10x hands just going for the call. 10-6, obviously 2-pair, and I think at this SPR we'll see, you know, a little bit more calling with the really strong hands. We do see some raising with 6 deuce, but deuces goes for a call, 6s goes for the call, and 10-6 also goes for the call. So let's now compare that to the 2x in position flop strategy, and you can see that the big blind now folds 36%, so it's folding a lot more frequently, and that's just because they have way more hands that just don't have anything on this board. And that's another reason why when we're shallow in tournaments, we want to be using a smaller raise size, because we want to play the big blind in position. You know, a lot of the time we get to raise, the big blind calls, we see bet and they fold, and that's just clearly a very nice winning strategy for MTTs. Now, obviously, it's not that easy. Like sometimes they're going to call, but you'll find that on a lot of boards, they just don't have enough to be able to continue. They're going to end up folding quite a lot of the time. So the out of position player then is going to call 44% and raise 20%. So playing a lot more aggressively in the second example, but also folding a bit more frequently as well. So in conclusion then, if you raise too big pre-flop, you're going to end up strengthening the big blind's range, and that means that you don't get to c-bet as frequently, and the big blind folds much less versus a c-bet. So really important that you just don't go too big pre and then completely change the strategy post-flop. And I think this is something that is really, really important to grasp. Like if you know, okay, this is a board that I'm supposed to do a lot of betting on. Well, it's only a board that you're supposed to do a lot of betting on if you've used the pre-flop ranges that you should have done. And if you're raising much bigger, then you're raising a much tighter range, but then your opponent is defending a lot tighter as well. So it's massively changing the flop strategies. You've got to be sensitive to bet and raise size. This is just a really important concept within poker, not just unique to tournaments, but to all kinds of poker. If the bet or the raise size is small, you've got to continue more, and if it's bigger, you should be folding a lot more frequently. So you've seen that my 2 points there: fold more against bigger bets or raises, continue more against the smaller bets or raises. And then finally, top pair, top kicker is a great check raise in both examples. So it doesn't really matter whether the guy had gone for a min raise pre or a 2.6x pre. Daniel Negreanu was absolutely spot on to go for the check raise in this hand. And I think he's played the hand really, really well. I think this is something that you should definitely look at. Sometimes I see players check raise top pair, top kicker in this example, and they run into an overpair and they think, he's always got an overpair. He's only ever calling with hands that beat me. Well, that's just not true. I mean, we even saw that in the hand example here. He's calling with second pair or an under pair on the board. So you can definitely get a lot of value from check raising top pair, top kicker. You also get value from not just under pairs, but from draws and from weaker 10x. You think about what his range looks like. You could have hands like Jack 10 suited, Queen 10 suited, King 10 suited. You're going to get value from straight away. Plus those under pairs, as we already talked about. So it's really important that you do go for the check raise with top pair, top kicker, because there's so much to get value from. And if you occasionally run into a better hand, well, I mean, that's just poker. It's just something you're going to have to live with. All right, so I'm going to wrap things up there. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.